Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 47 of Own the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians. My name is Jody Lai, and I'm the editor-in-chief of AutoTrader.
And my name is Dan Alika, and I am AutoTrader's road test editor. And Jody,
Tell me.
where are we?
So for those of you joining us on YouTube, we're in a new studio, which is kind of cool. This feels like very legit and professional. Not that we weren't legit and professional before.
I feel like this is like more Larry King vibes than I'm used to. I feel very like, we're in the zone.
This is very cool. This feels like I'm almost interviewing you, which is not true.
And I feel like I'm almost interviewing you.
Perfect. Wow, it's like we're having a podcast or something.
This is crazy.
Okay,
Boom.
but before we get started, I wanted to give you something.
Oh.
A little token of my appreciation.
Is this going to be a joke?
No.
Is this a joking of your appreciation?
I'm just a kind human.
Oh my God, you got me the hat.
So I know that the Bills didn't go as far as you wanted them to this
thanks,
season,
Jodes.
but I thought this would help soften the blow.
Okay, I do want to explain this. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
So Jody bought me this hat for Christmas, and it was super cool, and it's this Toronto-based brand called Stuntin', and so this is like this corduroy hat, and the one that she got me has this really cool like wolf head on it, and then she was explaining something else and wanted to like pull it up on the website, and then was like, oh my God, and I was like, what? And she was like, they have a buffalo, and if I knew that hat existed, I would have bought it for you. And I was like, oh, it's all good, but I guess it was like eating away at you a little bit.
I feel like I just needed to do it,
Thank
especially
you.
from what happened.
And yeah, it was a rough, so obviously this is going to air kind of weeks after the fact, but for those of you who don't know, I'm a huge Buffalo Bills fan, and I went down to the first round of the playoffs, the wild card round, watched them beat the Steelers. Didn't make it down for the divisional game against Kansas City. Was probably for the best that I wasn't there because it was a very emotional time. But this is a nice little pick me up, Jodes.
Good. I'm glad it helps. I know it was a dark time for you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it right here so that all of you guys watching on YouTube can really get a good look at this beautiful.
We'll tag
hat.
Stuntin' too. Maybe they'll repost our
sweet.
podcast.
Thank you.
So as we are recording this right now, the Montreal Auto Show is happening.
Yes.
The Toronto Auto Show is happening soon. And auto shows are a really hot topic in our circles.
Yeah.
And we really look at it from two different perspectives. And so you might have heard rumblings that like, oh, auto shows are dead. Especially when COVID was happening, it made it really hard for these in-person events to happen. And so there was a lot of change in the industry. There was a lot of people were just not sure of what was going to happen. And so Dan and I kind of wanted to demystify today why you might be hearing, auto shows are dead when, in fact, we approach it from a different perspective.
Yeah. And listen, I don't want to, obviously Jody and I have both been automotive journalists for a long time, and I'm not here to disparage automotive journalists, but there's a certain degree of like, I don't want to say selfishness, but this idea that, oh, auto shows are dead. But, it's very one-dimensional thinking where it's like, because media day isn't what it used to be. But the reality is auto shows were never for media. They were consumer events. And then automakers said, wait a minute, we have all of these cars here, and we're going to debut, remember back in the day, the Buick Wildcat concept. That was kind of the first concept car. But anyways, the idea that, well, if we have all the cars here and we have these new debuts, why don't we bring media in? And that they evolved into these massive, international events where you had journalists from around the world. Now, the Canadian auto shows have never been that, in spite of, the name being like the Canadian International Auto Show for Toronto, Vancouver International, and so on. However, these are always about consumers first and foremost. That's still very much the case today, just as it was, 50, 60 years ago. So are they dead? Absolutely not. Are they different than they were for everyone? Yes. Are they very different for media? Absolutely. But I always say it is the best if you're shopping for a new vehicle and you want to, do the old proverbial tire kick without the pressure of there's nothing worse than like, you want to just have a look around, poke around a vehicle, and then a salesperson comes out, and even when it's supposed to be helpful, it adds an element of pressure.
Yeah, and some people can feel intimidated by that.
Yes.
So the auto show is a really great opportunity to poke around different cars you might be interested in with zero sales pressure.
It's awesome. And also remember, aside from certain shows, and obviously this changes throughout the US, and I can't comment on what it's like in Europe, but for the major shows in Canada, sales staff aren't allowed on the show floor. So those people that are on the floor there in each manufacturer's booth, they're CSRs, they're customer service representatives. They're only there to answer questions. They're not getting commission. They're just paid to be there to talk about the vehicles. So if you have questions, they're good people to turn to, but they're not there to pressure you on, well, do you want to find out more? Do you want to like, yeah, sure, they'll offer that, but it's a low pressure environment. And it means you can get into a Honda CRV and then walk across the hall and go to the Toyota booth and check out the RAV4 and see right back to back, oh, this one has a little more space. This one's a little more comfortable. I like the infotainment better in this one. So I highly recommend anyone, and even if you're not, when I was a kid, even if you're not shopping for a new vehicle, we went every year.
We did too with my dad. I had so many great memories going to the auto show as a kid. I would go to all the different booths and collect all the posters and put them up in my bedroom.
It was the best. And this was like my parents and my brother and my aunt and uncle, and it became a tradition that we did. I would, again, recommend if you're looking for something fun to do, and with the Toronto Auto Show coming up, listen, we're not, affiliated with, sponsored by, there's no association. This is just kind of free advice. If you're looking for something to do with Family Day weekend in Toronto, it's a great event that has kid-friendly activities. There's a whole Hot Wheels set up downstairs. There's lots of cool stuff going on. So, and there's also cool, if you don't want to drive into downtown, which I understand, there's like a cool package that you can buy your Go Transit tickets and take the train in. So I think it is a great opportunity. And the same applies to Montreal. That's happening right now. Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton were kind of late to the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Toronto and Montreal shows restarted again last year. The other ones didn't. You're seeing those start up again, which is cool because I think at the end of the day, again, it's a consumer event.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to go back a little bit and explain where that auto shows are dead sentiment is coming from. So like pre-internet days, right? Like we're going way back here. Having media attend these auto shows was one of the only ways you can get firsthand information about a new car debut. So for our industry, for automotive journalists, it was massive. And they happened all over the world multiple times a year. And it was a really busy cycle because there's new cars debuting all the time, new concepts, new tech. And I really liked going to get firsthand experience, but also going there, you have access to engineers, designers, executives that you can interview and kind of get some inside information or some scoops about these new debuts or these concept vehicles. And I love getting that extra context. Nowadays, with the internet and tech being what it is, you don't physically need to be there anymore to have access to all of those resources.
For sure. But on the flip side, and it's, the reason why I still go to LA and New York, and I did Tokyo last year, because even aside from the access to these people that you're talking about, which is great, the ability to poke around, to add context to the vehicle, getting photos and some specs emailed to you, as great as that is, it doesn't provide that context that you can say, well, oh, this looks and feels like this. Oh, they borrowed this from an existing model, or this is something that in the existing lineup sucks, and it looks like they've addressed it, because you get to poke and prod and have a look around. So for us, they're just not as big as they were. And then same for consumers. But my bold prediction, if you will, there's been a lot of OEMs that have dropped out of auto shows, kind of famously, like all the Germans abandoned auto shows to spread their marketing budgets elsewhere. I have a feeling that they are going to come back. Ford, got out and then came back already, because I think, again, it's an opportunity to reach people in a way that the internet can't.
Absolutely. Just being there physically to be able to experience something, you see pictures online, it never translates. Yes. It never does. And so it's really important to see things in person. But just to share some stats here. So last year, attendance at the Toronto Auto Show was up 17% over the previous year. And it was the third most attended Toronto Auto Show in its 50-year history. Over 350,000 people went. In Montreal, they had about 148,000 visitors, which is about 75% of what is typical for them. So that's pretty good news. Vancouver Auto Show, Calgary, and Ottawa were all canceled in 2023, but they've all confirmed that for 2024, everything's good to go.
Yeah.
So they're happening in March.
Now, you will see some manufacturers scale back. They might not hit all the shows. Edmonton is one of the outliers, and so is Quebec City, where they are what we would classify as regional shows. There are sales staff that work those shows, and some manufacturers choose not to participate. And it's tough decisions, right? It's like if they headed there. My idea when I worked, so years ago, I worked at Subaru, and I was involved in the auto show, planning and everything. And I always thought expanding outside of auto shows would be like, so same setting, agriculture shows, just, kind of general, like the Toronto sportsman show or whatever, they like that outdoorsy sort of.
Like a boat show or something.
Yeah, but whatever. It's tough because budgets aren't up to, me individually, and they're tough decisions that have to be made. So, but again, it's just like it's an opportunity to check out a vehicle in a setting that you don't have to feel pressured. You don't have to, you can ask questions if you want. If you don't, great. If you just want to check out the cars and, again, with kids, it's a great opportunity to wander through, and the fact that they're all kind of coming back is a really good sign.
I think it's great. And there was also one in Vancouver last year that focused specifically on EVs, which I thought was amazing for an education standpoint. Like, what a great place to go to experience this stuff in person, without all the misinformation that you might be able to find on the internet. Like, just hear it right from the source.
Totally.
Maybe you go there and you're kind of addressing some fears you had about making the switch to an EV.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
For education, I think it's so great. And even at the Toronto Auto Show, they had a big like EV testing track where people could.
So that the reason that came to be, Ford was sort of late in its withdrawal from the Toronto show last year, and Ford had one of the biggest displays in the Toronto Auto Show. So the Canadian International Auto Show folks had to kind of scramble to figure out what to do to replace that, because what are you going to do in what you would call an anchor space?
'Cause it's huge.
Would be empty.
Yeah.
So they moved things around and added this EV test track, and by all accounts, it was a smash hit. Again, it gave people an opportunity to check out EVs that they may be apprehensive, but who would say no to a free? I mean, I did it at the LA Auto Show this past November, where Honda had what it's called a Moto Compacto.
Oh, I think it was so cool.
So basically, back in the day, Honda used to sell this setup that was a city turbo hatchback. So this really tiny hatchback, and you could get it with what was called a Moto Compo, which was this little folding scooter. And it went away, but it was, kind of one of those like legends of JDM culture, right? That everyone was like, oh, this thing is so cool. Honda brought it back, but it's been rebranded the Moto Compacto. It's about, I want to say it's like 44 pounds. It folds into a suitcase, and you can carry it with a little handle. And then when it's time to ride, you just pop the wheels out, unfold the handle, the seat comes out, and it's like a bike seat. And it's got like, I don't remember what the range is. Call it, 40 kilometers or something. But
That's not bad.
Yeah, if you were commuting into the city, bring that with you.
Yeah.
As
and like
then
a last mile
exactly.
solution.
So anyways, but they had a little test track at the LA Auto Show. And so I went for a rip.
See, that's so much fun too, especially for EVs, because you can do it indoors without any worries about the carbon monoxide,
exactly.
right?
Because that's something else that people, maybe like a little peek behind the curtain, so to speak, is like, it's, right in the safety code for like fire prevention and everything like that. the cars, when they get moved into the space, there's like, they can only have basically enough gas to like roll off the truck and onto the show floor because of emissions. There's also like weight distribution that they have to worry about and stuff like that. But anyways, yeah. So doing that with those EVs, it's nice because for a long time, and I want to say it still happens where there are certain vehicles you can test outdoors, but like, come on, guys, it's Toronto in February.
In the winter, not
like
pleasant.
Exactly. So if you can do that same thing on a little test course, great. And the other cool thing is Hyundai did some with the Ioniq 6 in New York and I think again in LA, but you were driven.
Oh,
you didn't get a chance to drive. With this EV, it's supervised, but in Toronto, you can drive the cars yourself, which again is really cool because it takes it to that next level of checking out a vehicle, doing a little bit more digging without having to go and feel pressured. So super cool.
Love that. I encourage all of you to go to your local auto show if you have a chance. I just think it's a great way to spend a day, to shop around, even if you're not shopping, just to see what's out there. I think it's really cool. Great, lots of family-friendly activities. AutoTrader, huh?
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna, before we move on, we will. I think you were gonna say that AutoTrader is going to be have a display. We're gonna have a display at the Toronto Auto Show with some of our award-winning vehicles, and that's super cool. So come check it out. Come say hi. But
we might be there one day too, so you might meet us in person.
I want to just change the topic quickly. I was driving here today, and I'm driving the Tucson hybrid. Now I did a social media rant because I was livid, and this is how livid I am. I'm going to share it here as well.
Oh my God. Usually you start the podcast with the rant.
Yeah.
Oh, this is different.
So a few years ago, Transport Canada wanted to address what are called phantom vehicles. So people driving around without their exterior lights on, but, mostly unwittingly. No, because, back in the day, you knew if your lights were off because your instrument cluster would be dark. Nowadays, with all these digital screens and stuff like that, it's impossible to tell whether it's, whether your lights are on without looking for that little green symbol. So Transport Canada wanted to address this and mandated automakers a few years ago now that the default position has to be automatic, which makes sense in theory. Here's my frustration. That is now, part of my frustration is that they should just be on. I've never heard a good reason of why you should be able to turn your lights off.
Unless you're sneaking around or something.
But even then, because you're in Canada, daytime running lights are mandatory.
Yeah.
And that means that your headlights are effectively on. So it's not like you're going to be sneaking around anyways. So why would you want to turn your tail lights off? Blows my mind. Anyways, this automatic setting. So in the Tucson, there's still an off position, which bothers me. But it was in automatic. Today's one of those funky days where it was really cold and then it warmed up, really foggy outside. And I noticed as I was leaving my place that the lights didn't come on automatically. And at first I was like, oh, it's just going to take a second after I pulled out of the garage. And then a couple seconds later, I'm waiting to turn, still no lights. So I turned them on manually. That to me is just like, this is proof that Transport Canada's mandate is toothless. It doesn't do anything.
Enough.
Well, the automatic setting is useless. It should work, but clearly it didn't because the Tucson today thought it was a bright, sunny day. I was so frustrated with this because all I'm thinking of, if I was driving, I would have been one of those phantom drivers, but doing things the way that the government said is fine.
Yeah, which turned out to be totally unsafe in a day like today, especially when visibility is only like, what, 3 car lengths ahead?
So bad. And to top it all off, this Tucson is white. So it's super foggy day, white vehicle, and I could have been one of these phantom drivers. Like I say, Transport Canada, make this right. Like there's no reason why automatic should be the default. Just like daytime running lights were mandated decades ago, do the same with the rear.
I wonder why they haven't done that yet. It's not like it's a hugely controversial thing. Like it's literally just a software tweak.
It's not like seatbelts or something that people are my right to die how I want to die. Like
I do want to be ejected from my car.
I wonder what. Oh, let's see what what does Aaron Rodgers have to say about this conspiracy? Why does the government want us to have our lights on? Has anybody asked that? Oh my God. Anyways,
they're in the pocket of big lights.
Anyways, that's my rant. I'm annoyed, and the government needs to do better.
I mean, I agree with everything you just said. It seems like it's an obvious thing, and I don't know why they haven't addressed it yet.
Bureaucracy.
Fun.
Anyways, we can change the subject now.
Okay, so just a little bit of good news for car shoppers.
Okay.
So our pal Barish Akurek, who has been on the show before, he's AutoTrader's data genius.
Data genius / Turkish delight.
That's very true. Wonderful man, very
great guy,
intelligent.
very knowledgeable, and this stuff is kind of like, I don't want to say it's boring. It's very interesting, but it's easy for this data that he works with could be presented in a very boring way, and he does a great job of just really like simplifying it.
He makes data simple for Canadians.
What a perfect fit.
And so he just published his quarterly price index, and there was some really interesting stuff in there that I wanted to share because it's good news, and like we all need some good news, right? Car pricing, super top of mind right now. It's no secret that things have gotten super expensive along with everything else that we have to pay for. Going back to pandemic times, all the microchip shortages, all the inventory shortages, that was really causing car prices to just skyrocket in the new and the used market. Simple economics because demand was greater than the supply at the time. So his report says that there's been a gradual decrease in demand for used cars since the beginning of Q3 in 2023. The reason for that is because new car inventory has been normalizing back up to pre-COVID levels, which means that there's less pressure on the used car market. Yeah,
less competent people that would normally buy new but didn't have the option turn to the used market, and that just meant more people reaching for the same selection of vehicles, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so what that means is that used car pricing have finally been normalizing. Okay. So they're not back to pre-COVID levels yet, but we're not seeing those huge increases we were seeing during the pandemic. Yeah. And so that's really good news. There are actual deals to be had out there, which is surprising.
I think you're going to start to see manufacturers add incentives again. Those sort of went away, or at least, they weren't as widespread as they once were. Now, we've done an episode on car pricing. Barish was on an episode about, why cars are so expensive. So we're not going to get into all of that. I will say though, keep in mind, there's a delicate balance between, the incentives and undercutting the value of the vehicle. So when there's a reason why Toyotas, for example, or the Jeep Wrangler, that's a great example of a vehicle. Incentives are never all that generous, but the flip side is the retained value stays higher longer. Whereas highly incentivized vehicles, Kia historically has been a brand that's really incentivized, and that's how it's been able to kind of climb the sales ladder. But those vehicles are not worth as much because the money that's what you call left on the hood, so how much incentive is applied, basically you take that money off the back end. So you're saving it up front, but then when you go to upgrade to a new vehicle or whatever, it's just not going to be worth what it was. So I always caution people that it's like, don't just go out there and say, oh, look at this thing's a great deal and there's 10 grand off, but think long-term and what your plan is in the future. Because if you want to parlay that into another vehicle, let's say 4 years down the road, you might not get back the money that you were hoping because of that incentive. But again, incentives are starting to come back. And I think that's going to continue because you're also seeing this, it's sort of a pendulum, right? With supply of new vehicles where automakers had all this pent up demand that couldn't be met because of, like you said, the microchip shortage was a huge problem. And then all the vehicles that were built on those sort of back order are now sort of piling up or starting to pile up. So that's going to be the reason why you'll see more incentives, because now it's not going to be a case where there's sort of too much inventory nationwide, but it's going to get to that point where, they're going to need to clear out some cars.
Right.
So I think there's going to be some deals in the future.
That's good advice. Cool. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Jodes.
And before our Ask an Expert segment, here's a message from your friends at AutoTrader.
Struggling to find the car you want? AutoTrader always has hundreds of thousands of cars for sale all across Canada, making it a great way to find a great car at a great price. Visit AutoTrader today.
Today's Ask an Expert comes from LH.
LH.
Not sure what it stands for, but just found your podcast and love it.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks, LH. So they have a 2012 Toyota Prius V, and they loved it.
Okay.
They bought it at $179K and sold it at about $280 when the engine light kept coming on.
Pesky old
He
engine
loved
lights.
the car. He said it was a perfect car. So he was looking for a new one. Oh, sorry. He got a Chevy Sonic
Okay.
from a private sale. It was clean, ran well, got rid of it because, again, those repairs ended up costing too much.
Yes.
So he wants to sell this and buy a car with a good warranty.
What?
But
The engine light in the Sonic.
The Sonic kept going off.
Do you think LH stands for like light hell? Like it's been living in this light hell of these check engine lights?
Maybe.
And like,
It sounds pretty accurate.
Yeah.
And so this person is 62,
Okay.
would love a hybrid vehicle again, no young kids, would prefer a hatchback or a small SUV, doesn't want a new car,
Mm-hmm.
1 or 2 years old he's hoping for, wants to pay maximum $35K.
Okay.
So he wants to know, is he even close?
I think so.
And do you have any recommendations?
Yeah.
I have some.
Yeah.
I would say if you liked the Prius, get a Prius that's like 2 years old.
Well, but LH would prefer a hatchback or a small crossover.
Yeah, you can get,
No.
oh,
The
I see.
Prius
Okay.
is a sedan.
I know.
I think the RAV4 hybrid.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, hybrids of all vehicles on the market, new and used, hybrids are where you're still going to see supply challenges, especially when you're looking at Toyota. Toyota has really struggled pre-pandemic, throughout, and now post with keeping up with demand. Some people I've talked to have been on a wait list for like 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think $35,000 is a reasonable,
Pretty generous, actually.
That's doable. You'd have to look at the base. So the RAV4L, I think it is, L hybrid. It's manageable. I just think it might take a little bit of time. You might have to shop around, maybe look outside of your kind of local area, but 35 grand is totally reasonable. If you are open to new, there is the Toyota Corolla Cross hybrid. So it's a little smaller than the RAV4, but same approach, same powertrain, really efficient, and kind of does everything that you would need. And I think you could get into one for about 35 grand in Canada. So that's another good option. Do you have any others?
No, I like the Toyota ones, especially because LH wants something that's relatively reliable with no headaches.
Wait, what if LH likes hybrids? Could it be?
Hybrids,
Could it-
lights hell.
Yeah. LH, I hope that helps. Another one to look at, price-wise, I think you should be able to pull it off. I really like the Ford Escape hybrid, and now that thing's been around for long enough that price range should be doable. But that's
about
another one to
a
consider.
Kia Niro hybrid.
Yeah,
That's a couple years old.
Yeah, if you're cool with front-wheel drive, which I mean, you did the Prius V and the Sonic, so
Yeah.
I don't see why not. But yeah, that's kind of, four decent options. Please let us know kind of how your shopping process went. Go test drive them. Another piece of advice I'll give before we run out of time here: test drive daytime and nighttime. I've given this advice before because the lighting is a huge factor. Not the check engine lighting. I mean, the actual lighting is just a huge factor that you want to consider. Sometimes you might get behind the wheel of a vehicle during the daytime and be like, I love this. And then as soon as it's dark, you go, oh, like the headlights, they don't sweep broadly enough or whatever the case may be. So check it out day and night. But there's a few options, and let us know how your shopping goes.
Thank you, LH, for your question. If any of you have any questions you would like to ask Dan or I, you can email expert@trader.ca. But that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Drive safe, and
we'll see you next time.